Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this session by SWMRT, where we will be discussing about bulk generators. Today's focus, session 1, is going to be about segregation at source and how we can do it. And we'll be talking to 3 community champions who were part of our study, and we will be, they will be sharing what they did, how they have made it work. And these are large communities and who have been doing it for a very long time. So we'll start off our session today. We have Sandhya Narayanan from SWMRT, who's going to give a quick introduction to SWMRT, the bulk generator rules, and some parts of the study which is related to the segregation part of it. Welcome, Sandhya. Over to you. Sandhya, you're on mute.
Okay, let me redo that again. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out to join the session. And I'm sure you will find a lot of things of value in it. And we really look forward to us joining us in the future 2 sessions. So I'm going to just do a little bit of context setting around this. As you're aware, this is one of 3 sessions. And we have kind of broken up the subject matter into 3 parts. The first one deals with segregation at source, which is today. The second one will be more around the processes that are followed in the apartments in terms of the management of it. And the third one will be where we actually have a chat with the service providers and the solution providers. We've done this so that we can actually do justice to the topic. It's only with the context of the study that we have done, and of course within the framework of the bulk generators setting in Bangalore. A quick word about SWMRT, Solid Waste Management Roundtable. We are a collective of practitioners. We've been working for sustainable waste management practices since 2009. And we have a few ideologies that we have really done our work around. The first one and the most important one, which still continues to remain our bedrock principle, is that segregation at source is the most important thing. And the best way to achieve it is through door-to-door collection. The second one is how to establish waste stream collection. That is, every waste stream that is collected, whether it's wet, dry, sandy, and the other things, continue to stay segregated till they reach their end destination. The third one, we are very focused on the inclusion of informal sector in recycling and in the process of waste management. The fourth one, it's about promoting waste to compost, waste to gas, waste to recycle, and not waste to bury or waste to burn. This very typically refers to the landfill, and burn typically refers to the waste to energy incineration. And then, of course, the important one for us is that we have to promote the maximizing of localized processing and the minimizing of centralized landfilling. And the last one, non-recyclable, phasing out of non-recyclable products and packaging. So we have been able to kind of keep with these ideologies, and any waste management models that we work in pretty much has a role for every one of these. The core work that we do is around facilitation, where we facilitate collaborative projects with, in the city with anyone who's willing to work on it, be it from the grassroots level to the government. We work on policy advocacy, we work on campaigns, research, and training. These are our 2 flagship campaigns. Swachhagraha, Start a Green Spot. The Swachhagraha focuses on saying no to landfill and yes to safe food. And the other one is 2 bin 1 bag. And this framework of the study is really a lot to do with the 2 bin 1 bag. And that's really where this thought process started, where we wanted to understand how apartments are managing segregation and how much of the 2 bin 1 bag concept is actually being used. So with that framework, we went into the study, which is we are focusing on the solid waste management practices and not about the law or the legal part of it or the policy around it. We are only focusing on what are the practices that are being followed in the residential complexes in urban Bengaluru today within the framework of the law. And this is a case study of about 23 apartments. Of course, when we say apartments, we are talking about the bulk generators. And when we talk about bulk generators, what the law says about the bulk generators is that as per the SWM bylaws, it requires a residential bulk generator to be over 100 units and to manage their own waste through in-situ arrangements with or without the use of an empaneled service provider. When I say without, I only refer to the part which is managed in situ. Then there is the Central Act, which is the SWM Rules 2016, which is very much, we are aligned to that Central Act, which again talks about every bulk generator is identified and they are the ones who generate more than 100 kilos a day. There is also the case PCB Air and Water Act, which requires all properties, which have gone into occupancy.
Looks like Sandhya's having some network issue. Just give us a few minutes.
Recognized by the Bbmp bylaws. It's basically three types: the residential, the institutional, and the commercial. When we talk about residential, it refers to the apartments, the gated communities, and any other villas, any other name by which it is called. And the institutional is the government offices, the big, large campuses, the public utilities. The commercial is, of course, the food and beverage operators, the corporates, tech campuses, and so on. So what is the responsibility of the bulk generators? The wastes are basically categorized, as you all know. Bangalore follows probably the earliest follower of the three-way segregation of waste, which is wet, dry, and sanitary. So the other areas are also garden and inert waste, which has to be stored, segregated at source and stored in separate containers. And when it comes to wet waste, the bulk generator is required to process it in situ, either by its own staff or with the help of outside agencies. Where the wet waste is not being processed in situ, that is in exceptional cases where the space is a problem. And with all other waste types, they are also required to hand it over only to the approved empaneled vendors, who are also called as the authorized waste processors. Basically, which means that all those who are able to show that they have a destination where they are managing this waste and that they are not just taking it from the apartments and dumping it in the landfill. So there has to be proof that they are actually able to manage the waste that they pick up. So what is considered as non-compliance? Some instances of non-compliance by bulk generators are where the waste is not segregated at source. And that doesn't, this holds good even for every waste generator in the city, where waste is not being handed over to the door-to-door collection system. In the case of apartments, it's probably to the housekeeping who's collecting it or any other agency who comes around to collect it. And where the bulk generators are not managing their organic waste in situ, where the waste is not managed in situ and handed over to agencies who are not authorized waste processors. That is, they are not able to showcase the fact that they have a place where they're able to process it and they're just going and dumping it. Those are instances of non-compliance. So what are the categories of waste that a bulk generator needs to manage? If you look at the wet waste, the preferred way of managing it is in situ. And there are, in other cases, empaneled service providers where it is possible to showcase that there is no space available. In the case of dry waste, the empaneled service provider has to be used. In the case of sanitary and reject waste, while it is collected and segregated and held separately, it has to be handed over to an empaneled service provider. In the case of garden waste, again, the preferred option is where it is managed in situ and also with the support of the empaneled service provider. With e-waste, again, the option of working with an empaneled service provider. So coming to the study, we are calling this as the edition 1 of the study because this is something that we really would like to take forward on a continuing basis. We know that there are a number of apartments in the city who are doing great work, and we'd like to make sure that we're able to showcase this with the city at large, so that everyone, there's a cross learning and everybody is able to learn from the practices that others are following. Today, this study covers about 23 apartments, communities, which comprises about 10,800 households. As you can see from the location pins, we've pretty much covered across the city, and we've taken a cross-section across the city. And what the study objectives was to understand the practices of SWM, especially with respect to segregation methods, and where the impact of the two-bin-one bag method in of segregation. Also to understand the other SWM practices that are being followed with respect to logistics, collection methods, storage and processing of waste. Then to understand the roles and responsibilities of waste management committees in the residential complex. And we know there are challenges and there are limitations, but we wanted to kind of study that. Then to take these learnings and further advocate them for policy level changes and initiatives with the Bbmp, as well as with the Pollution Control Board. Then assessing the adoption of these laws by the communities and capturing the challenges, identifying the gaps in every stage of waste collection and management. And finally, creating a database of the best practices that are being followed so that the others can also benefit from it. Information and detail. We basically categorize the 23 apartments into 3 size segments. 100 to 300 households was the small category. The medium category is the 300 to 800 households, and the large category, which is in the greater than 800 households. Incidentally, I have to tell you that what I am showcasing to you today is just an extract from the study. The study will be available on the website. I think Anu will give you more details of it as we go along. The waste types that we're handling and we looked at through the course of the study are aligned to the basic waste types. We've not gotten to special waste types. We've stuck to the broad ones, which is wet, dry, sanitary, garden waste, and e-waste. And the practices are, what are the practices that apartments are following for minimization and for segregation? What are the practices that they follow for collection and transportation? And similarly, what are the practices that they follow for processing and disposal? So this gives you a view of, the pictures that we collected as we went around these apartments. And as you can see, the way in which the waste is showcased is really nice. It's a container-based system in most places. Most places have a place that is allotted to it. Also, the staff who are handling it always invariably have good, PPE, that's personal protection gear. And it has been a pleasure to see the good practices that are being followed by these apartments. The study contains the details of each of these 23 apartments and how they're actually following every one of these aspects. What we are covering in this webinar is a broad discussion of the same thing. So coming to the findings, we had about 10 findings. We've picked up a few of them which relate to this segment of the seminar, which is segregation at source. And as you can see, the bifurcation of the 23 apartments is that we had 56% who are greater than 800 households in the large category. About 22% of these apartments were in the 300 to 800 category, and 22% were, so in the small and mid-size, we had an equal number, and in the large, we had the balance, 50%, 56%. And like I told you, the total of households covered is about 10,800 households. So how many of them were following the two-bin-one bag? And so when we went and particularly checked on whether they're following the 2-bin-1 bag, which is really the color-coded, visual, typical kit that we have of a bag and 2 bins, which is given to every household, 30% of them still continue to follow the 2-bin-1 bag method, which is great to see. Some of them started with the 2-bin-1 bag, but did not continue it. But everyone, that is 70% of them, follow the 3-way system, but not necessarily the 2-bin-1 bag system kit. So if we look at the cross-section of these 23 communities, we also have the pleasure of, I think, talking to some of the earliest communities which implemented waste management. And I'm talking of as early as 2008, 2009. Rahija Residency and Renaissance Park 1 actually are the earliest members who have implemented it 11, 12 years back. So there are others. So they follow about, form about 13% of the total 23 communities. Then about 8 to 11, 40%, close to 40% are in the 8 to 11 segment, which is still very, very good. In the more recent entry is the 4 to 7 years, which is about 45%. And in the less than 4 years is only 5%. So the ones we've showcased here are really the granddaddies of segregation and bulk generator management, and they've been around a long time. And we've seen that there is a certain maturity in their practices, and a lot of new creative ways of handling it have also come through. The good thing to note was that in 65%, in 35% of the apartments, the sanitary and reject waste is being collected separately. This is not great. We would really look forward to the time when sanitary and reject waste is collected separately, but that is also possibly because of the limitations of the services that are being given to the communities, and that is why they're not able to. And also, I think cost compulsions have been some of the other reasons, which is why the sanitary and the reject waste is being collected separately. So why is this important is because when we talk of sanitary and reject waste being collected separately, it just means that it's going into a landfill. And if our ultimate objective is to do diversion from landfill, we should really be able to look at sanitary waste going to an incineration unit and only reject waste, which is or inert, which is going to a landfill. So the basic challenges that we have come across with respect to segregation at source, which the apartments voiced with us, is that they found that there's non-compliance in some of the communities, despite charging of penalties on the non-compliant residents. The use of bin liners was seen to be particularly challenging. I think, the graded responses to how bin liners are used. Some communities have gone the whole hog and done away even with newspapers. Some are using newspapers as an interim or transition method, and some have ended up just using plastic bags, where the plastic bags are then taken out by the housekeeping and then put into the dry waste every day. So there have been challenges around the use of bin liners, which have also affected the segregation process. And like I mentioned earlier, about 60% of the communities are collecting the sanitary and the reject waste together. The unique practices that we found is that, like I mentioned, the bags in which the dry waste is collected are emptied and reused, which is good. So they're not generating that many plastic bags which move out of the apartments on a continuous basis. There are many apartments which have been able to showcase how sanitary waste can be collected separately. Medical waste is also segregated and collected and dropped off at the hospitals by some communities. Electric vehicles have been used to transport segregated waste within the community. Cutlery banks have been used to reduce the usage of single-use disposables and to promote reusables. And periodic donation drives to dispose cloth, toys, and other items responsibly. So these are obviously, done by the management committees and by the communities themselves. And these have been a few of the unique practices that we have picked up. a lot more are listed in the study. Coming to the conclusion, the
It's like Sandhya's network is again having an issue.
efficient the system is, the better the system works.
Sandhya,
yeah.
I think your network had frozen when you started. Maybe you could just repeat. There seems to be some network issues at your end.
On the slide?
Yeah, the rest was fine. I mean, you can just, I don't know if you started just.
So the recommendations are a summary of the recommendations which have come out both from the experience of the apartment communities as well as our own, analysis of what we see as being the most important requirements. The thrust on segregation at the household level, at source, is simply the most important starting point, and it continues to be so. And also, so therefore the design around how is it collected, what is the suitable frequency, how is it being kept to a minimum, are all really important to gauge how efficient the process is within the apartment community. The use of information kits, where it is streamlined with a standardized 2-in-1 bag kit, where a new resident comes in, a new kit is handed over to them, or if someone has lost a bag, then a new kit is again handed over. We found that there the system is easy to handle, and the component of broadcast or communication is much easier to handle. And that is really a recommendation that more communities should use this concept. Stricter laws are needed for segregation by the Bbmp to help the management committees deal with the non-compliant households within their communities. And finally, the role of management committees is really important. I mean, actually, this particular point, there are a bunch of things that a management committee has been seen to be doing, or which is really important. I don't want to go into the details of it. I'm sure Anu will pick it up and bring it out during the course of the discussion. But this has been a very important part in the fact, or an important factor in the success of the community, which has showcased a good practice. So with that, I come to the end of the presentation, and I'm going to hand you back.
Yeah, thank you, Sandhya. So that was a brief introduction about the study, the BGs, and the study related to today's context. Sandhya, maybe you can just stop sharing the slide. Yeah, so I'd request, we have 3 panelists today who will be joining us from 3 communities. We have Dr. Bhavna Bhargav from Adarsh Palm Retreat. And then we have Chitra Nair from Rahija Residency. We have Samia Raghavan from Shriram White House. And we have Satish Malya representing BF, Bangalore Apartment Federation. I'd request you all to switch on your cameras and videos. Yeah, great. And thank you all for joining today. So today, so actually there were so many, like Sandhya mentioned, we interviewed 23 communities, and it was really heartening to see that so many good practices and so many communities were, following very good. We just had to pick 3, and I'm sure we'll be meeting each of the communities in subsequent sessions, and we'd like to showcase everybody and all the work that they have done. And we just decided to go ahead with invite 3 of them available today. And I think one of the things is they are all very large communities. So we thought when segregation is possible in large communities, I mean, that's more challenging. I think it's much easier, or it'll be inspiration for the others to join in, I mean, to be able to implement it. And also each of them have been, I think, above 5-6 years, I think almost 8 years, 10 years. That's the kind of compliance that they have been following. So that really helps to, that let's learn from them. What is it that is making them, sustainable, this whole effort? So what we'll do is we'll kind of go in a question. I mean, I'll just ask questions, and some of them I'd ask you to individually and probably answer, and the rest we could go. And we also have Satish we'd like to hear, some couple of questions from BAF perspective. What's being done, and how many communities are segregating, and what are the other initiatives that BAF is taking to promote segregation. So I'd like to just quickly give a brief introduction to the communities that, just about our study. Just give 1 minute. Yeah. So these were the 23 communities that we have covered in our study. And we've tried to cover it across the city as much as possible from all parts of it. We had reached out to many, and these were the ones who responded, and we were able to do. There were definitely more people who responded, and we'd like to include in the second phase of our thing. And so today, we have, like I mentioned, we have selected 3 of them. We've tried to compile a quick summary of each of the communities, and I just like to, highlight some aspect of it and set the context before we get into the question answer session. So Adarsh Palm Retreat has about 1,440 households, and they have been segregating since 2014. And they started with 2-bin 1 bag, and they continue to be using the 2-bin 1 bag method in their community. And we'll hear Bhavna, how they are doing it, and what are the other steps that they are taking to ensure compliance and to be able to. They are picking up dry waste 3 days a week. Rahija Residency, again, has about 800 households. They have been segregating from 2009, and they're also picking up the dry waste 3 times a week. They're doing some amount of composting, and some amount of waste is being sent out. We'll again talk to them and see how are they managing to make compliant and continue it from 2009. And the third community is Shriram White House, which is about 570 households. And they have started in 2012, which is again almost 10 years that they have been doing. And they are picking up dry waste once a week, which is wonderful. And we'll talk to Samia and understand how they are able to do that. So this is just to set the context of the 3 communities that we have on our panel today. And so I'm going to start with, Bhavna, maybe. How did, you start off? Maybe you can give a quick introduction of how you started, this whole initiative. I know it's a long back in time, but I think you were also involved in the whole initial thing that you started within your communities, one of the early thing. Quick summary for the people who have joined in as to what really you started off, and how are you managing to do? Maybe just quick about the starting part of it.
Yeah. So I was in Rahija Residency when we started, and I was part of the volunteers group that started the segregation in 2009. And then I moved to Adarsh Palm Retreat in 2014, and that's when we were amongst the early movers. And it being a big community, we realized that there is a lot of education that needs to go into it, because all of them were new movers, right, and there were no systems in place. And I realized that it was very important to have proper guidelines in the apartment. So the first thing that I did was I became part of the committee and decided that, if we have to do something, it has to come from the committee, because that's what the residents, really follow. So I got into the committee and we started doing a lot of conversations around waste, started showing people pictures from Mandur and saying why we really need to do segregation and what's happening to the waste that's going unsegregated out of our, houses. And also started talking to people about our waste, our responsibility. We also started stocking 2-bin-1 bags in our office. And because most of the people had that, thing that I don't have 2-bin-1 bag, from where do I buy it? So we actually kept a kit of 50 2-bin-1 bag kits um, in our office, so that whoever needs a bin can easily procure those bins. So that way it was much easier. We started having conversations block by block, because having a WhatsApp conversation with all the people became difficult. So we had one-on-one, face-to-face conversations when we were doing door-to-door collection. And also we started having meetings with every block to make them understand what we are doing, why we are doing. And that actually made things pretty easier, because when people understood why we were doing it, they were, ready to comply with these things. We realized that over a period of time, there were a lot of events that were happening. And although we were doing 2-in-1 bag at homes, events were something that were actually, were a big source of bulk waste. So we also started segregation for the events. We started keeping segregated bins there. And all these bins were actually manned. All our housekeeping staff was paid extra to stand there and make sure that all the waste is segregated. We also started having a lot of sessions over sustainable menstruation, about composting, about making bioenzymes. So it was all in, a group of volunteers who were making an effort. And every few months we were having these sessions to make sure that we reduce the waste that we are generating. And then we segregate the waste that we are sending out of our community overall. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So I think, so one is, I think you have to go door to door and really talk to people, and really that's important. And the thing, what you're saying is also continuously keep having, sessions and awareness, so that people are kind of aware, in that thing, and get more, more involved and get to know more, and start engaging.
Yes, that was when we were small. Now what we have done is we have put them into our bylaws. And every time somebody moves into the apartment, they are given a set of guidelines which they have to follow in the apartment, that contains all these things about SWM, about usage of 2-bin-1 bag, and they get a pamphlet about how to segregate.
Okay.
And if they
we'll just come to that. I mean, how new people are joining in. I think that's one of the challenges communities face. Maybe Chitra, can we, can you share, how did you start? I think it's 2009, and how was it? But did you all also go tower by block, or how was it? How long it took to convince people and shift to three-way segregation? Was it always you started off with three-way? How was it in your community at Rahija?
Okay, so once I think Bbmp brought about this this rule that we had to segregate waste. So I joined the eco committee of Rahija much later, but there was a group which was working very closely with how we could implement this at this community level. So we initially had the green bin, the red bin distributed to residents. Each there are 8 towers and approximately 800 flats in the community. Not all are occupied, but that's a very small percentage of non-occupied flats. So we had these 3 bins, and I think over time it just became second nature to anyone who comes into Rahija, whether it's newcomers or people who moved out and come back again. It's become second nature to segregate. There's wet, dry, and sanitary and garden waste, and electronic waste. Each tower has a place where they can go dispose electronic waste. Though we don't have the color coding at the individual house level, the final waste does go into color-coded bins for each tower, and there are specific places for each tower to store the dry waste. So dry waste is picked up only thrice a week. Wet and sanitary and reject are collected daily. Of the eight communities, the eight blocks, there's one block which has 160 flats, which is doing in situ composting, and we've partnered with Hasiru Dala. So they are the main people who collect our wet, dry, and reject waste, and they also buy a high value dry waste. So the high value dry waste is all these cardboard cartons, etc., which nobody usually people sell outside to the kabadi walas. So this is sold to them at fixed price. So the volume we generate is quite high, but I think as a community, it's been managed quite well. You initially had pamphlets given to individual owners, but then we have this stuck on our board, what are the days and what are the types of wastes. So it's almost become second nature. I think now your hand or automatically goes dry, wet. It's become like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Chitra. So I think that's really, again, I think it's about engaging with it and having these, managing at a tower level. It becomes easier that rather than just looking at this whole thing in one big. Coming to Samia, I think probably I'd like to ask about I think we saw that your community picks up dry waste once.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There is an error there. It was sent to me. It is twice a week. Yes.
Oh, twice a week. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, so generally.
But we have pushed people to hold it for about 2 to 3 weeks during COVID times, and we did fairly well.
No. So I'm just asking, so are people okay with that, dry waste being picked up twice? Is there?
Yeah, most of the time they are okay with even once a week. Sometimes if the collection day falls on some kind of holiday or a festival day, we have been able to skip that day and sync with the next day. We're able to do this. Most people are, aware of. Like I said, they've been trying to do even 2 weeks during the COVID time. So we thought this is one good thing learned. So when push comes to shove, we do it only once a week. But most of the typical week is twice weekly, Mondays and Thursdays.
So that means people are willing to kind of hold on to their dry waste, and not really give it out every day, because that's something I think many communities have the challenge of to go out it every day. So, but people are able to, and hold on to it and not having an issue with.
Yeah, this e-commerce, and especially during the pandemic, has really pushed people's buttons on that the volume does increase a lot. But yes, most people are not very averse to holding on to price.
And also in terms of managing the quality of dry waste. So because you're holding it on for quite some time. So is it clean, dry? Is that something that also people comply with? Or
they're reasonably compliant. We get to hear from the housekeeping staff every now and then about how people sometimes leave unwashed packets and so on. So then the maintenance office staff generally give them a call and a little, a earful on how it should not be done. We've not had success with fining. We do have, we discuss it in the managing committee, it's sort of approved, but we find that it is difficult to put it in practice on ground, because sometimes I think people bribe the housekeeping staff also with food or other things. So there is some extent of, under the carpet non-compliance can happen once in a while.
Right.
We generally find out, so occasionally we do surprise checks and keep this to a minimum.
Okay, so I'd like to ask Satish, maybe as BAF, so how many communities are part of the Apartment Federation, and are people following, I think we are supposed to do at a minimum three-way segregation of wet, dry, and, reject and sanitary. So what is the, are communities doing that, or is it wet and dry? That's where they start off, or is it, so what is that, as far as do you have data or information about that? And what is BAF doing to encourage people to, segregate or provide guidance for communities who want help with that?
Good evening, everybody. Can you able to hear me?
Yes, Satish, we can hear.
Yeah, I'm part of technical service team, and we have energy, water, and solid waste as the major tasks assigned to us to drive it. Coming back to solid waste, I think way back in 2016 we started the process, and we are educating the apartment community. As in your one of the slides we have shown about the medical waste and other type of waste, it is maybe not happening 100% because of various reasons from the Bbmp. But I am sure most of the apartment are going for a 2-bag and one bag and 2-bin system. But we don't have any real data saying that no, we have done any survey of this 1,200 apartment we have members. So we are yet to do that, but I'm sure maybe majority of or maybe 90-95% of the people are doing it. The challenge is the smaller apartment where below 50 or something, which how they are doing, we are not sure. So we have a plan to reach out to them, saying that to have some small videos and educate them regularly, saying that this is the best way going forward, because smaller the apartment is not mandated now. Correct. Because it is not 100 kilo below. But still we want to encourage them, saying that no, this is the best way to do it, and no, this long way. Long time now we have to do this small video and educate such apartments. But coming back to your question of how to go forward, because this 3-way segregation, I think people are not taken that seriously. 2-way it is happening most of the places, and because maybe bigger apartment is happening, but maybe 100 or 200 flats apartment. This is also a challenge, I think, which we have to bridge the gap. And with the help of you experts, I think we should be able to bridge this gap. But there are challenges, which I think everybody knows, but we want to promote it and reach to our apartment members.
Yeah, that's right. So I think many people are still, wet and dry is the understood language. So they kind of don't really realize where the reject of sanitary is going. It's probably going into a part of dry because it's not every day. So I think that's one thing. As a city, I think we all need to aim towards is to get this 3. Only then can we have the wet, get in its proper form, and the dry, and then really the reject way. That's when you get good dry waste quality. So I think Bhavna, coming back to you're able to do it. Are you doing this third, reject, and is it sanitary together, and or reject and sanitary is at least 3 ways is for sure because of the 2-bin 1-bag, and there's no problem in that aspect of people complying with it. And secondly, I'd like to ask, how do you ensure compliance? So what are the different methods that you do? Is it the volunteer talks, or is it the housekeeping? I mean, what is the steps to address non-compliance within the community?
So we have set up the guidelines and we have put them in our bylaws. That is something that every resident who lives there has to comply with. So there is no questions about that. We do only 3-way segregation, plus the e-waste and the medical waste separately. Yeah. So, but at home level, we do only 3-way segregation. There is no separate sanitary waste picked up. It's picked up with the reject waste. Right. Even during COVID times, we had, block-wise collection, and all those bins were placed near the CCTV coverage area. And even then, we were actually tracking whether the waste was mixed or not. Right. In usual times, it is the housekeeping staff who is supposed to train. So supervisors are supposed to brief the housekeeping every day. And the staff is supposed to pick up waste only which is segregated and in proper bins and bag. If it is not, then the supervisors go and speak to the residents give them a verbal, notification, post which there are 2 written notifications which are given to the resident and an email is sent to them.
Okay.
If they still don't comply, then we fine the resident. And then there is no pickup of the waste.
Okay. And so you've been able to, achieve what was 90%, 98%, 100%? What would you say is the compliance?
I would say around 90% because 10% of the population is kind of moving population.
Right.
Some of them we never get to meet also because they have unusual working times. So there's no conversation happening there. Okay. So, but I would say that whoever is there as a permanent resident, 90% of the waste I would say is properly segregated.
Okay. So Chitra, what is the step that you all follow when a resident is moving into the community? So is there like a welcome kit or, since you, is there something that is there or does the committee member tells them or is it the housekeeping? Who educates the resident when they move in to the community about this whole waste processes that need to be followed?
So the block managers who are like in supervisory roles, they are for each block, they are the ones who tell new residents that we have this waste segregation process. So you have to segregate your waste dry, wet, and also if you need more information, it's put up on the board. It's a very simple flyer that is easy to follow. So when there's non-compliance, it's again that escalation level. The housekeeping staff who pick up the waste from door to door go and directly complain to the manager, and the manager speaks to the deviant resident, and they normally come back in line. But if there are repeat, deviations, then it is taken up at the block committee level. And when there is a committee meeting, they call in that resident and explain and stuff. There is no fine or anything as such. But when the eco committee met last, we were trying to develop some kind of a sticker to put on the door and, to make it a little more
obvious.
Yes. And to warn residents, and then that had an escalation pathway, but that we have not been able to implement yet because like Bhavna said, they have it in their bylaws. We don't have it in our bylaws.
Right.
So, but I think most residents are very compliant.
Okay. Samia, so what is the, what do you feel is the, role of the, is it a part, is it need to be an important part of the MC, or do you have, like SWM volunteers? I mean, what is the thing that has worked in your community for it? And you think the best way for it? Because I think wherever there are volunteers, it starts off, there is somebody active who takes it up, it is there. Or should it be a mandate of the management committee, just like they look at other, facilities within the apartment?
Yeah, I think it should become like that. And so I think in our case, in about 2-3 years, we did have that waste management committee. We have waste management, pest control, and since COVID, sanitation, all this has come under one, expenditure head, so to speak. So that's helped, keep that process in place. And also we had another, at least for this reject sanitary bifurcation, I should actually be thankful to our senior health inspector. She in fact came to us and said, we noticed that you're doing this with reject. So I have fined your neighboring apartment. I'm going to fine you also if you don't fall in line in a week. And sure enough, with that letter, I was able to get everybody's concurrence to switch to a provider. So this is one of the good things that Bbmp did for us.
So you are doing sanitary and reject as...
Yeah, we're doing that separately. And I would like to say this was pushed, and somehow this was easy because there was a threat of fine. And then that was a good thing for us. And yes, it should be part of, it should be one of the things that the management committee handles. It should be in everybody's psyche all the time. So that seems to... that's what.
Yeah, so then I think it becomes, and I think if they need guidance, and that's really what we are trying to do, is put together the best practices of every community so that every management committee, because again, they're all students and they need that knowledge. I mean, you may or may not know about it. So hopefully we, like this will help them to, this knowledge. Yeah, so I think like also Bhavna, maybe you can talk a little bit about the, what are the other initiatives that you're doing for, let's say, I think you mentioned about you having drives to collect clothes and, things like that, which is not really dry waste in that sense, but at least it reaches, the right destination. So what are the other things that you do drives regularly, or is it again driven by management committee or volunteers? How does it work in your community?
We do a lot of donation drives, which are mainly led by the volunteers. Management committee doesn't really promote those. We have a WhatsApp garage sale group for Pan APR. What we are trying to do in that is we are trying to move the products within the community. Somebody who doesn't need a product may be very useful for somebody else.
Yeah,
right. So something like old furniture, old equipments, books that people are not using, some decorative material, random things. There are lots of things, and it's a very, very active group, and people are continuously selling their electronics, books, clothes, lots of infant, toys and other things. So that means we are able to reduce quite a bit of our waste through that donation. Okay. We also do a lot of donation drives for our staff. And so thrice a year, we do drives where residents can donate clothes, footwear, bags, stationery, and other things. During winters, we do woolen. Sometimes we do just the sari collection. And all these donations are then given to our housekeeping, landscaping, our maintenance. It's distributed between all these staff. And they are free to take it for themselves, for their families, and for others.
So this happens like on a periodic basis.
Yeah, so this is usually, we try to do it
on Diwali or festivals.
Yes. Right. Yes, around 2-3 weeks before the festival, so that they have something new to wear for the festival. Right. Because most of these donations, they're hardly worn clothes or saris which have been worn only once or twice. And it gives us an opportunity to have them also celebrate their festival, have good things for themselves and their kids. So yeah.
What about you, Chitra? Do you also have something? Do you also have I'm not checked, like, do you have a cutlery bank, or do you have these drives for e-waste? How do you manage the e-waste? Is that you said, I think you said about you have drop-off boxes, or you do drive collections? How do you do waste? And for these other items,
so for like the other items like clothes and donation drives, those are managed by other volunteers. It's not part of the eco thing. We have I think Goonj coming and picking up. So people who want to donate go and drop it off at the clubhouse, and then Goonj comes and picks it up. But for e-waste, it is like all the tube lights and bulbs and electrical. Not electrical. Sorry, things like cells, batteries, all those kind of things get dropped into the e-waste, which is cleared once a month. Once in 3 months. So once in 3 months. So residents do know that they can go and drop off things there. So that's the practice that we've been following.
And do you also happen to have a cutlery bank or residents? Not yet. Okay.
No.
Okay. Do you have, Samia? Do you have a cutlery bank?
Yeah, we have a cutlery bank, and we insist that any function that happens inside use that. We don't charge rent, we just charge a deposit and we return it in case no material is lost. Otherwise, people are replacing it. And all our common area events also happen with the cutlery bank only. We have staff staying over for extra pay to wash and reuse the.
And I think you have sales.
We have a thrift store concept. We do something similar to what Bhavna described, except that we now started doing it every month. We do it on the second Saturday, and we've started calling it Saturdays for Seconds, or Seconds. So everyone remembers that theme of Second Saturday. I think the first 2 months, people realized it was, it took about 2 months for us to start getting calls from people asking when is the next drive. So
Right.
both the staff who typically buy, as well as people who donate, they've started taking this seriously. So we've had about 5 editions now, and it's picking up. And the remaining unsold stuff, we have identified some slum communities to which we send it. And so once we also collected enough to send to Gunj. So we did recently we did a school books bags alone drive in the last previous edition. So it's been going well. So it prevents the material from becoming too far gone to being called waste.
Right. Correct. I think we all have so much of that stuff which you don't want to put it in dry waste, but trying to find that somebody using it, and it's that lampshade, it's that one gift.
Yeah, it's always something. It's some gift that you got,
and you don't know what to do with
who doesn't know you.
Yeah. So that's really, I think we need to have more of these to be able to let it find its right destination or a new destination. I'm going to come back to Satish. Wanted to understand what is the, can you just tell us a little bit about the BAF? Are there like different, I understand there are clusters and different community groups. So are there people responsible, and is it for for waste, you have a separate group for SWM, things like that within these clusters, or is that like a centralized thing who are able to guide all the different clusters? How does it work? Can you just maybe explain a little bit?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have 1,200 apartment as of members, and it is for 25 clusters we work. Like we go by the Bbmp, the cluster zones. So we have about 25 clusters where you have a cluster leadership team which is having president and secretary and the other members. So they drive that particular cluster. So it was in the past, it was a centralized setup. Now, last few months after our AGM, we have decided to centralize. So now we form a separate team actually for a technical service team, which include, as I said, these 5 verticals, like, as I said, electricity, water, solid waste, even fire safety and other things. So we are forming a volunteer team in each vertical. Like if you see the solid waste management, so we are picking up one or two people interested from that particular cluster to this group, so that we can do it very fast. Previously centralized, we give some case study, we publish something, but we were not getting
able to reach to
the member apartment or from member apartment down the line. So we thought we'll do this one way. Second way, with working with the governments, like we are also working with the Bbmp, which is can take a long time, but we are taking a different route now because the member secretary from Pollution Control Board is very active, and we working with him very closely on this solid waste. In fact, he also promised us to give the e-waste is the biggest challenge, and he said that he's going to work on it. I think his Pollution Control Board agreed to put one bin in each apartment or something like that, because this is very empanel vendors also very few. So that one we are taking care of from the Pollution Control Board. And one more, the other biggest enabler for us to people to do is, like, as you said, you have mentioned some survey, but we are going much ahead, saying that no, you identify a green initiative from an apartment. So that I think Pollution Control Board going for a survey to know about how environmental friendly you are as an apartment community. It includes solid waste management practices, and whether it's electricity conservation or water conservation, everything. So this is the major, the weightage is given to solid waste because there is a city problem. So Pollution Control also agreed, saying that even though it's a bulk generator, you have to do this as per law, but you also have challenges. The vendors are not available and other things. So we are working with the government and the Bbmp to reach out to more people in apartment community.
So I think, so if people, if communities want to join the things, so they need to reach out to, like a centralized BAF, and then they get allocated according to the cluster, depending on their area.
No, they can go directly to the cluster itself. Of course, if you have been part of one city, we know which cluster is. You can get in touch with the president and the secretary or the leadership team there, and they can take it up.
Okay, so communities who want to become can actually join the cluster, and that can all work together and kind of again share not just waste but across all the
But they'll be in turn will be part of the bigger team in the centralized, so they will get a lot of information on day to day, right? So what is happening?
I think so we've talked about segregation, we have looked at compliance. So I think I'd like to just a little bit touch upon the staff that is sort of being trained to do this, and how do you manage their training? Do they keep changing? Do you have to keep training, as well as is it like fixed for a set of people for a particular tower or whatever, that kind of thing? How does that work? So let me start with this time with Chitra. So how many staff are there, and how are they trained, and are they able to manage it, or do they keep changing and you need to do, how does it?
So each tower has a fixed set of housekeeping staff, so that does not change. So the orientation happens in case somebody leaves within the group itself, their own. They themselves get, they are told by the existing housekeeping how it's done. And recently, when we changed the thing a bit, wherein we wanted the housekeeping staff also to benefit from the dry waste. So when they collect the dry waste from a certain block, they are allowed to sell it to Hasirudala, and Hasirudala gives them a price for it, and they divide it among how many ever people are there. Initially, they used to hoard this dry waste and sell it outside to some vendors. Of course, their prices are more competitive, but we wanted to completely bring a stop to that, so they sell it to Hasirudala. And depending on the number of households in each tower, the number can vary from anything from 4 to 6. But totally for the entire community, there are about 40 housekeeping staff. And when Hasirudala comes to pick up the waste, even the security is present there, because he makes a note of the kgs, and because at the end of the month they will charge us. So that's how it works. So the security of each
also
block
is involved in the process of managing. Yeah, Samia, how about your community? The staff, are they trained? Do you have
the staff
trainings,
they
or
rotate
they manage?
Right, they don't stay fixed to a block; they rotate, so that way no permanent bribe corruptor pairs get formed. We make sure that doesn't happen. So what we do is that we take we have these afternoon sessions for the staff, and the morning, the basic bulk of the work is done. Periodically, we have sessions for them, and we also did sustainable menstruation session for the staff themselves, so that they understand, and we keep asking them questions about whether you're segregating waste at your house, to the extent which the person's not going to go back to the other ways ever. So we do this periodically, and also we insisted that the staff, security, and these staff, they get their own cups. We have them engraved with their names, so they don't, when they drink tea, they're not throwing a paper cup every time. So these are all things that we do periodically.
That's nice. What about Bhavna? How are the because so looks like the housekeeping and the supervisors are really key to this whole process.
Yes,
absolutely.
Segregation to it. The community, because they are the ones who are going day in and day out, and really need to invest in them being convinced, them being sincere in them, so that the management committee and the eco committees can be
so that's true.
So what happens in your community for this?
So when we started, we were actually doing frequent sessions. Some of us volunteers were actually talking to the supervisors and the staff. Now the supervisors have been with us for a long time. So they exactly know what rules we follow, what are the guidelines. They also know, the bylaws.
Right.
And they are the managers for their staff. So whatever their staff, they are responsible for them. So we have a WhatsApp group where we have volunteers from blocks and we have the SWM committee members. And if we see a fault, we put it in the group and we ask the supervisor to find out why it's happening. He in turn will, look at the staff and say, why is that happening? So it basically comes down to all the supervisors, and we make sure that they talk to the staff on a daily basis. They brief them on a daily basis. If some kind of issue happens, then the whole staff is informed as to what is the correct way, what is the wrong way. Even, we don't let the staff talk directly to the residents. We have the supervisor talk to the residents because, it is very difficult for the housekeeping staff to really,
Correct.
communicate. So we have made all the supervisors head of this initiative where they are responsible for proper pickup and talking to the residents. So it is all their responsibility. So training the staff, making sure it's all, well segregated is all their responsibility.
So for all the participants who have joined, and I forgot to mention that if you have any questions, do put it in the chat window. We can open up for discussions. And I'm sure you can ask the individual panelists specific questions if you'd like, or to general also. Please put it in the chat window so we could ask them while we sort of, we're towards the end of the session now. So what is your, Bhavna, what would be your, advice or for, let's say, a community which is which is going to get started, or this is not happening in their community? What would you say is the first 2 steps that the community would need to do, and what would be your suggestions or advice to them?
I think putting processes in place first and educating the residents. I mean, you have to hear their view also as to why what issues they are facing. Some of the times it's just the apprehension or, the willingness to not start something, right? So I think talking to them really works. And, just putting the process in place so that, everybody is aware of rules and regulations and what needs to be done. Because if the communication is not clear, that's where, there's a whole lot of
problem.
Yes. So your communication has to be very, very clear, and you need to communicate with the residents very often as to what you expect and what is supposed to be done in the apartment.
Correct. So I think somebody has asked, can you define reject waste? Maybe Chitra, you can talk about what is reject waste, that in your definition of course, we have the 2 bin 1 bag, certain things, but what is reject that you define in your community and that people are, in addition to, I think sanitary waste, everybody knows is the component. In addition to that, are there specific things? And that's something that we even found out in our study, actually, that the definition of reject waste is very varied. In some cases, it is the non-recyclables is reject. In some, bulky waste like mattress is reject. In some garden waste, I mean, you don't know what to do with it, is reject. So the definition of reject is something that we really found in the study, that all the different 23 communities had different definitions. Of course, sanitary waste being a very core component, but all the other items were different in different communities. Maybe Chitra and Samia, you define what is reject in your community, or what is the communication that you have for your residents?
So we have like broken pieces of glass or ceramic which is broken, or blades, the shaving blades, razors, then things like
expired
broken
medicine would also be.
Expired medicine goes into dry waste.
Okay.
Yeah. So those kind of things, as well as construction debris. Many people renovate,
Right.
And there is, it can't be that kind of waste, the volume of waste can't be just put in a bucket or kept out. So that is, we also take that as reject waste, and we have a designated time frame by which a resident who is doing a renovation needs to clear that reject waste, which is kept outside in a particular area, just outside the outer periphery of the community. And that is also reject waste for us.
Samia?
Our rejects are more clearly defined. We have only non-recyclables as rejects, practically. The things like broken chappals or some torn clothes, broken ceramic, and small pieces of those are what we call reject. Garden waste is separate, and whatever just Chitra described, that goes as construction and demolition debris. That goes to a separate place.
Yeah, I think we're not even
consider
talking
that as
about that
reject.
because that's a whole big chapter. And
it's a whole big chapter, and yes,
and we don't know,
Yeah.
we really don't have, and it's also not within our scope that we have really looked at that.
We definitely don't take that as reject waste. Nobody here believes it is reject waste in our community. And some amount of broken, as I said, broken glass, broken chappals, and clear non-recyclables go into. Occasionally, some mixed waste slips in there, which we keep checking every now and then, and try to educate the staff about not to accept that material, to send it back and bring it back as separated wet and cleaned dry waste. So we do that as well.
Okay, so there's a question that anybody can take it up. So one of us, are children involved in educating the elders in the family about proper waste management? So if any of you who's doing, do involve children and programs, maybe earlier, probably now your system is set up, but, did you all use kids? Did you all have programs around it? Were they, many people say that great to involve children and they are very enthused and, people listen to them. So if any of you have any experience about that, please share. There's somebody who's asked that question.
We used to have cultural events pre-COVID times, and every cultural event we had a small drama that was done by the kids about waste management, waste segregation. It used to be just a quick 2-3 minutes,
right.
Conversation with the people, because that was a time we could actually get their attention. And we thought if kids would do it through drama, through song, through some kind of a poem or something. So that was something that we did, and we actually got quite a bit of attention from the residents.
Okay. Did anybody use, I've heard in some other community actually where, kids were also part of this going door to door also. And I believe, not at least, so they're very enthused. And in fact, there's somebody who actually had suggested they even got these one blue, green and red t-shirts and went. So it was the 3 colors, I believe in one of the communities. And I thought that was a very creative idea of, really reinforcing that point of the 3 bins, 2 bin and a bag color. Anything else anybody would like to add?
We do have these sessions. There were during summer, we had these little summer camps for which children were involved, and they were asked to identify types of waste. And we should probably involve them more, but I think we didn't do that over the last year. We should start doing more activities with them. But they know that if they have to do a school project and things like that, they come and ask me. So I think every school is now has something to do with waste, and they are encouraged to do that. Okay, there's a question from Sushila. I don't know if any of you can answer, or Satish, saying, are there communities that have their own incinerator and produce energy? Not that I'm aware of, and I think it's not allowed within Pollution Control Board.
I'll answer this. I think Pollution Control Board is coming up with some tools now, and they are in discussion with us, which we are not agreed, but insulator is available for a smaller for the apartment level. Maybe you can put maybe 50 kilos or 20 kilos is available. It's not that expensive. Maybe the tune of 25,000 to 30,000 range, which I think Pollution Control Board is going to empanel now. They say that you can do medical waste and sanitary waste. I think sanitary waste, it cannot be done. That is a reason we are objecting. Other than sanitary waste, medical waste and other things, it can be done. So we are working with the Pollution Control Board. It's not yet decided yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Samia, I think there's somebody who's asked about trying to get in touch with, I think, Maridi for.
I see. For our area, it is Medicare. Maridi, yes, somebody else complained in another group that they were not reachable. Maybe somebody like Mr. Ramakant or someone can push their buttons and ask them to respond. We'll find out why that is so. We'll find out whom you should chase in order to have Maridi respond.
Right.
Maybe Pollution Control Board, actually. I'm sure they are the ones sitting above them, right? So somebody, maybe Satish can get someone from the KSPCB to wrap Maridi on his needs to respond.
Yeah, you can tell us who was the vendor. We can check up with the Pollution Control Board. I think this time the member secretary is very active and he's very much saying that if vendor is violating something, we have to take him for task. So we can reach to them.
But Pollution Control Board coming up with the small scale incinerators actually a worrisome thing. So maybe we'll take that offline. Yeah.
We
certainly don't want incinerators sitting in a lot of apartments across Bengaluru.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's a solution that we even want to imagine.
No, we can jointly meet him. Okay, because there is a thinking process he has done, and as a pilot, the Pollution Control Board, along with the Bbmp, has called for a meeting of apartments about in the month of February.
We'll discuss
in Yelahanka, and they said Yelahanka, let us start. So I was objecting to it, and anyway, we have to discuss.
We'll discuss this offline. Yes.
Yeah, I think that needs to be. We'll look at that. So there are a couple of questions, I think, about in situ composting. So that we will be covering in the session 2, where we will be discussing about community composting and how should you do, what are the things around it. And the regarding vendors and empanelment and all that is really the focus of session 3. Sandhya, would you like to, do you have anything? Otherwise, we can ask them to share their final thoughts.
Anu, do you want to share the feedback form link in the chat window, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe you can just ask Vedic. You put it in the chat?
Yeah, could you please share it in the chat window?
Yeah, we have just put together a small feedback for today's session. If the participants would be wonderful if you all can fill that up so that we know, how we can improve, and your suggestions will be very valuable to us. Sandhya, any?
Yeah, no, just
Geeta has a question. So this asked a question about Bbmp, about waste management at source. Didn't get a response. So what was your question, Geeta? I'm sorry, I'm not able to.
Yeah, so Geeta's, I think your question was something about creating. Okay. Geeta's question is, Bbmp has come up with something called build your own waste bed in apartments and said they will organize it. The cost is around 2 lakhs. Is anyone aware? Geeta, first of all, we need to understand which stream of waste. Are we talking about wet waste? Is it about composting? So I think none of us are aware of anything like that yet. And I think one thing is that whenever we talk about, we're very particular, and that's really the segregation is really about which stream are we addressing today? I mean, are we talking about, is it medical waste that needs solution, dry waste needs it, recyclable, non-recyclable, organic? So I think the conversations of waste is no longer, we cannot just talk about waste as one big thing. It's got to be those different streams, because each of those streams have a different different stakeholders involved in it. There is different rules for it. There are different methods of handling it. So I think that's where we need to get and understand what is it. And, we are just today looking at, as a citizen, as a resident, it's minimum 3 waste, but ideally it's 5. It's wet, dry, sanitary, reject, and e-waste. I think that's really realistically, we need to segregate things. But of course, on a regular daily basis, we call it as 3 ways because the others are not on a regular basis. Yes, Sandhya, you were saying something?
No, just to say that it seems to appear to be a chicken and egg between how many streams of waste can I segregate vis-a-vis how many services are available for these waste streams. Unfortunately or fortunately, in some sense, it's been creative thinking on the part of a lot of apartments which have led to streams being handled better. And it was really nice to hear Bhavna, Chitra, and Samia, all three talk about unique ways of managing waste. And I think I would urge everyone to not look at ready-made solutions all the time for segregation of waste streams. It's difficult. And in some sense, what we're doing as a city is really unique. So let's also try to keep this in mind that let's not forget that we should try and use our own creativity to see how best we can utilize and not compromise on segregation at source, but go ahead and try and separate out all streams as much as possible. The showcase communities that we have on today have shown us how it's possible. But my request would be for everyone to kind of go out there and try and do the same thing.
Yeah. So I think we're sort of towards the end of our session. Thank you all for joining. Are there any other questions, Vedika? Anything else? Otherwise, I think
you can just announce the next 2 sessions, Anu, when they're due.
Yeah. So, so the next session is we're planning again next Saturday, 5 p.m. And that's going to be, we're really going to focus about in situ composting, space, no space, what are the options available. Actually, it's going to be about processing, but a large focus would be on the composting part of it because dry waste still needs to go out. But there are, we'll also share how some communities are even doing further sorting of dry waste, if that is an option. What do you do with excess compost? There are communities who are producing compost, but having challenges. Are there solutions for it? So all this is going to be discussed in the session 2, and that's going to be next week, next Saturday. Do look out for our social media for the registrations, and just to know, and probably stream it on YouTube also. And we'd like more and more participants and more communities. Please spread the word around so more communities can join and benefit. We'll get 3 other communities who are part of a study who are doing amazing job of managing their complete, kitchen waste and organic waste within the community itself, and what are the challenges and how did they overcome. And probably the 3rd session is going to have more about, who are the vendors, what are the challenges. We'll try and also get somebody from Bbmp, if possible, to be part of that discussion. And that's going to be the subsequent Saturday, that is probably on June 4th. So do look out for, these on our social media handles, SWMRT Bengaluru on Instagram and Facebook, for more details about these programs. So thank you very much. Thank you, Bhavna. Thank you, Chitra. Thank you, Samia. Thank you, Satish, for joining us today for this program. And it's so wonderful to hear that, the communities are doing such a brilliant, and what really fascinated me was the fact of, it's like 10 years, 8 years. So yeah. I think there is no excuse for any community to really, say that it's not possible, not doable. And these are all like above 500 units. Each of them is 500 is, I think the smallest. Even if it's easier in a smaller community because it's about segregation. We are not looking at processing, right? Segregation is talking to 100 is a much easier thing to do. It's doable. And it's really our Bbmp, no Bbmp, it's our responsibility, it's our city. And I think we have to make that little extra effort. And we are very happy at SWMRT to guide any communities. You reach out to us, we'll connect you with these communities so you can connect with it and see what works best for you, best for your community. And, like Sandhya said, each one has their own, way of handling it. And so you can come up with it. And that's really what we wanted to showcase, that there are multiple ways of doing it, but it's definitely, it's doable, it's possible. and you can sustain that, this entire thing of segregation at source. Thank you all for joining, and good evening now. Goodbye.
Thank you.